Canada's economy is under immediate siege. The White House has just issued a definitive ultimatum: 25% tariffs on every single vehicle crossing the 49th parallel. The deadline for compliance was set for 12 p.m. today. Ottawa's response was a single word: rejected. This is not a trade dispute. It is a battle for national survival. Billions of dollars in cross-border commerce have frozen instantly. We are witnessing the most dangerous diplomatic standoff in North American history. The United States demands total control over Canadian border enforcement. Canada has mobilized its economic defenses to protect its sovereignty. The era of polite negotiation is over. This is Operation Northern Shield. If you support the defense of our borders and our industries, like this video now. The strategic landscape of North America shifted violently in the last 72 hours. The trigger was not a missile launch, but a document delivered to the Canadian ambassador in Washington. The demands were absolute. Canada must cede operational oversight of its immigration and customs protocols to a joint North American command or face an immediate, crippling 25% tariff on all automotive and steel exports. This sector represents the lifeblood of the Ontario-Michigan Industrial Corridor. The threat was calculated to bypass diplomatic channels and strike directly at the economic heart of the nation. For decades, the Canada-US border was known as the longest undefended border in the world. That definition effectively ended this morning. The arsenal in this conflict is not ballistic, but it is no less destructive. The weapon of choice is the Section 232 Executive Order, a legal instrument that classifies Canadian trade as a national security threat to the United States. We are talking about a kinetic economic impact equivalent to a naval blockade that targeted industries automotive assembly, aluminum smelting, and softwood lumber employ over 400,000 Canadians directly. The sheer scale of the threatened tariff wall is staggering. We are looking at a potential loss of $100 billion in annual GDP if these measures are fully implemented. The factories in Oshawa, Windsor, and Oakville are now on high alert. Supply chains that operate on a just-in-time basis, often moving parts across the border 6 or 7 times before a vehicle is finished, are facing total paralysis. This is an economic siege engine parked on the Ambassador Bridge, waiting for the order to fire. But Ottawa has revealed its own arsenal. In a move that surprised intelligence analysts in D.C., Canada had already prepared a surtax order countermeasure. This is a preloaded retaliatory list targeting $155 billion in American goods. The selection of targets is tactical. Precision strikes on politically sensitive American exports like bourbon, agricultural machinery, and finished steel products. It is a doctrine of mutually assured economic destruction. The message is clear: if Canadian industry burns, American consumers will choke on inflation. Intelligence reports indicate that the U.S. administration believes Canada would fold under the pressure of the deadline. They miscalculated. The detection of this diplomatic offensive began weeks ago when Canadian Signals Intelligence and Trade Commissioners noted a shift in the rhetoric coming from the U.S. Trade Representative's office regarding the Fentanyl Czar initiative. The demand was no longer just about cooperation. It was about submission. The strike force concept proposed by the U.S. would have essentially placed American officers in command of Canadian ports of entry. This was the red line. Sovereignty is non-negotiable. The Canadian Border Services Agency, CBSA, immediately activated its enhanced vigilance protocols. This was not just a bureaucratic shuffle. It was a deployment. Additional officers, K-9 units, and mobile scanning technology were surged to key crossings like Lacole and the Pacific Highway to demonstrate that Canada is fully capable of policing its own perimeter without foreign intervention. The atmosphere in the intelligence community is electric. Every word spoken in the closed-door meetings in Washington is being analyzed for intent. Is this a bluff, a negotiating tactic, or a genuine intent to decouple the North American economy? The consensus among defense analysts is that the U.S. administration is using the tariff threat as a battering ram to force Canada's hand on immigration policy. They are weaponizing trade to dictate border security policy. We are now tracking the movement of commercial fleets in real time. The logistics data shows a massive spike in panic shipping. Companies are trying to rush inventory across the border before the electronic tariff curtain falls. This surge is creating logistical choke points that look like tactical blockades on satellite imagery. The Ambassador Bridge is backed up for miles. This is the visual manifestation of the crisis. Thousands of trucks, idling engines, and drivers caught in the crossfire of a geopolitical showdown. The clock strikes 12 p.m. The deadline has passed. The silence from Washington is deafening. In Ottawa, the War Room, officially the Cabinet Committee on Canada-U.S. Relations, is in session. The Prime Minister does not call the President. The rejection of the demand stands. The order is given to the CBSA: hold the line, maintain maximum processing speed, but prepare for lockdown. At the Peace Bridge, the tension is palpable. Commercial drivers are checking their phones, waiting for the notification that their cargo is suddenly 25% more expensive. A Canadian customs officer, speaking on condition of anonymity, describes the mood as pre-combat. They know that if the tariffs hit, their job shifts from processing trade to managing an economic disaster zone. The border is no longer a gateway. It is a fortification. Simultaneously, in the auto plants of southern Ontario, the assembly lines are still running, but the management teams are in the boardrooms. They are running simulations of a Tier 1 supply chain failure. If the parts from Ohio and Michigan stop coming because of the tariff dispute, the lines stop in 4 hours. That is the margin of error. 4 hours between prosperity and layoffs. The focus shifts to the diplomatic front line. Canadian negotiators in Washington are presenting a dossier of evidence. They are not pleading, they are briefing. They lay out the data. Canada has seized record amounts of narcotics at the border this year. They present the Strikeforce Operational Metrics joint intelligence operations that have already dismantled 3 major transnational criminal networks. The argument is technical and cold. We are secure. Your premise is flawed. Your demands are illegal. The American delegation pushes back. They cite the flow of irregular migrants. They point to the loopholes in the asylum system. The confrontation is sharp. It is not a polite exchange of views. It is a collision of national interests. The U.S. representative slams a folder on the table. It contains the executive order, signed and ready. The Canadian lead negotiator does not blink. If you sign that, she says, you trigger the countermeasures. The price of steel in Pennsylvania doubles tomorrow. This is the moment of truth. The confrontation moves from the abstract to the concrete. The U.S. administration must decide if they are willing to inflict pain on their own manufacturing base to punish Canada. The game of chicken is being played with the economies of 2 G7 nations. The markets are reacting. The Canadian dollar wobbles, then stabilizes as traders realize Ottawa is not bluffing. The defiance itself has value. Suddenly, a leak from the White House press pool. Sources say the president is re-evaluating the immediate implementation. The firmness of the Canadian rejection has caused a fracture in the U.S. strategy. They expected capitulation. They got a shield wall. The American auto lobby is screaming at the White House switchboard. They cannot afford a trade war with their biggest customer. The internal pressure in Washington is building. Back at the border, a convoy of Canadian military logistics trucks is seen moving towards a staging area near the Windsor crossing. This is a symbolic show of force. It is not for combat, but for critical infrastructure support. It signals that the Canadian government treats the flow of trade as a matter of national security. If the commercial sector fails, the state will step in to keep the essential goods moving. It is a message to the Canadian people. We have a plan. The sun sets on the first day of the crisis. No tariffs have been officially collected yet, but the threat hangs like a guillotine. The rejection was the first shot. Now comes the siege. The Canadian public is being rallied. The narrative is no longer about free trade. It is about dignity. The message from the government is consistent. We will not be bullied. We will not be coerced. We are a sovereign nation. The fallout from this day will define the next decade of North American relations. The alliance is cracked. Trust has eroded. Canada has proven that it is willing to risk economic pain to preserve its political independence. The 25% tariff threat was meant to be a leash. Instead, it became a razor that cut the ties of dependency. We are entering a new phase of cold trade. The borders will remain open, but the scrutiny will be intense. Every truck is a potential leverage point. Every barrel of oil is a bargaining chip. The North American fortress concept is dead, replaced by a North American standoff. Canada has drawn a line in the snow. The saldo of this operation is clear. The United States has the size, but Canada has the strategic choke points. We supply the energy that powers their grid. We supply the aluminum that builds their jets. We are not a vassal state. The rejection of the tariff demands was a tactical masterstroke that exposed the limits of American pressure. This crisis is far from over. The tariffs may still come. The countermeasures may still launch. But today, the history books will record that when the demand for surrender arrived, Canada stood its ground. The shield is battered, but it is unbroken. If you believe in the strength of our sovereignty and the resilience of our economy, make sure you are subscribed. We will be monitoring this situation hour by hour. The next update will cover the specific countermeasures targeting the U.S. energy sector. Stay vigilant, stay informed. This is your frontline. The reality of this standoff goes deeper than just the headlines. We need to analyze the specific trade defense mechanisms that have been activated within the Canadian Department of Finance. These are not standard policy tools. These are emergency levers designed for economic warfare. The surtax order is authorized under the Customs Tariff Act, specifically sections that allow the Cabinet to respond to acts of foreign governments that adversely affect Canadian trade. This is the legal bedrock of our defense. Let's look at the target list in detail. Why bourbon? Why Kentucky? Because it puts direct political pressure on the Senate Minority Leader. Why dairy from Wisconsin? To squeeze the Speaker of the House, the Canadian strategy is asymmetrical. We cannot match the US dollar for dollar in total volume, so we target the political pain points. This is precision economic targeting. It is the same logic used in military airstrikes. Hit the command and control nodes, not the empty fields. On the ground, the impact is already being felt by small businesses. The uncertainty is the killer. A logistics manager in Mississauga told us, "I don't know if I can ship tomorrow. If I ship, and the tariff hits while the truck is in transit, I lose my entire margin and then some. I'm parking the fleet." This is the invisible cost of the crisis. the paralysis of hesitation. The economy is holding its breath. However, there's a silver lining in this tactical assessment. This crisis has forced Canada to accelerate its diversification strategy. For years we talked about reducing reliance on the U.S. market. Now, it is a matter of urgent national security. Trade missions to the European Union and the Indo-Pacific are being fast-tracked. The Minister of Trade is reportedly on a plane to Berlin this evening. If the U.S. closes the door, we must kick open a window elsewhere. The energy weapon is the unspoken pillar of this confrontation. Canada supplies more than 60% of U.S. crude oil imports. The Midwest refineries are designed to process heavy Canadian crude. They cannot simply switch to Saudi light sweet crude overnight. It requires billions in infrastructure upgrades. This is Canada's nuclear option. If we restrict energy flows, the price of gas in the American Midwest skyrockets. No U.S. president can survive a $5 gallon gas price during a midterm cycle. Ottawa knows this. Washington knows this. It is the gun on the table that no one talks about. The intelligence detection pillar of our defense relies heavily on the Canada Border Services Agency's ability to prove their efficacy. The U.S. claim is that the border is porous. The Canadian data proves it is a filter. We intercept guns coming north. We intercept drugs moving in both directions. The narrative that Canada is a backdoor for threats is a fabrication used to justify protectionism. Our officers are among the best trained in the world. Their detection rate for contraband is world-class. This crisis is an insult to their service. The technological aspect of the border defense is also critical. Canada has invested heavily in non-intrusive inspection (NI) technology, large-scale X-ray scanners that can see through a shipping container in seconds. This allows us to scan a higher percentage of cargo without slowing down the flow of legitimate trade. The U.S. demands for more security often ignore the fact that we are already deploying next-generation tech that supersedes their outdated manual inspection requests. We are fighting a 21st-century trade war with 21st-century tools. As we move into the night, the situation remains fluid. The war room in Ottawa will not sleep. They are monitoring the overnight markets in Asia to see how the global supply chain reacts to the North American instability. A drop in the value of the Mexican peso is often a leading indicator for pressure on the Canadian loonie. The financial analysts are practically serving as forward observers in this economic conflict. The confrontation is also psychological. It is a test of national will. Can the Canadian public endure higher prices on consumer goods if it means protecting our independence? The initial polling suggests a resounding yes. There is a rallying effect. When the neighbor threatens to burn down the fence, the community comes together. This unity is a strategic asset. A divided nation creates leverage for the adversary. A united nation is a fortress. We must also consider the alliance implications. NATO partners are watching this closely. The USMCA CUSMA in Canada was supposed to be the gold standard of modern trade agreements. If the US can tear it up on a whim, what is the value of a treaty? Canada is fighting not just for its own economy, but for the rule of law in international trade. We are the defenders of the agreement. The U.S. is the aggressor against the established order. The chronological confrontation continues tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. When the markets open in New York, we expect volatility, we expect rumors. But the fundamental fact remains. The rejection has been lodged. The tariffs have been refused. The line is held. This is a developing story of massive proportions. We are witnessing the realignment of the North American continent. The old assumptions are gone. We must be prepared for a period of turbulence. But turbulence is preferable to subservience. Canada has chosen the hard path, the path of resistance. In the coming days, we will see if the U.S. administration blinks. If they withdraw the threat, it will be a victory for Canadian resolve. If they proceed, we enter the trenches of a trade war that will scar both nations. Either way, Canada has changed today. We have realized that our sovereignty is not a gift from our neighbor. It is something we must defend every single day. Keep your eyes on the news ticker, watch the exchange rate, monitor the border wait times. These are the vital signs of our nation in this critical hour. We will be here, analyzing the tactics, the strategy, and the outcome. The final message is one of strength. We have the resources, we have the talent, we have the resolve. The alliance crisis is a test, and we are passing it. We are not asking for a fight, but we are ready to finish one. This is the definition of soberania nacional. This is the defense of our home. Stay strong, stay united. And never forget that the true north is strong and free because we make it so. End of transmission.